Hello, this is Matthew Gores for Feast of Tabernacles Ministries. I pray that you are blessed. Into this installment, this video, I want to go over the basics of the pattern of Moses' tabernacle, the continuity of God's pattern that he reveals in his tabernacle. Because I'm going to go over some specifics of the tabernacle and how it was laid out and the worship that was done in the tabernacle and the order that God showed in the tabernacle. But this isn't just for a teaching, for an understanding like some history lesson. The point of this is that God was revealing things about himself in all of the aspects of the worship that he ordained. When Moses was up on Mount Sinai, God met Moses up on Mount Sinai and he gave him the law while he was up there. And he gave him these specific instructions of how to build this tent of meeting. This tabernacle is a tent, and how to make this tent of meeting as a place for his presence to dwell, for the worship of him to go on. And so I'm going to go to Hebrews chapter 8, which gives a little bit of background of why this is important, why this isn't just a history lesson, what it was that God was showing us when he gave these specific instructions. In Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1, it says, "Now the things which we have spoken," this is the sum, and that the things we have spoken, those are the earlier chapters of Hebrews. He's going into other topics, the order of Melchizedek, the priesthood, but we'll go on here. We have such a high priest, that high priest being our high priest, Jesus Christ, who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. He is a minister of the sanctuary of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it's necessary that this man have somewhat also to offer. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer their gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things. As Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle, it said, "See, says he, that you make all things according to the pattern showed to you in the mount." Hebrews chapter 8 verse 5 is pointing out that God specifically said, "See that you make things exactly according to this pattern that I show you." And if you go back to the book of Exodus, when Moses was up on Mount Sinai, we have recorded in the book of Exodus 3 entire chapters on making this tabernacle. All the details, actually a 4th chapter, so it's chapters 25, 26, 27, are all the details of how to make the tabernacle itself. And this picture behind me is a artist's rendition, obviously, of this tabernacle with a wall of tent on the outside of it, and inside this tent here is the actual tabernacle, and then of course this bright spot above it is the glory of God, the pillar of fire, what is known as the Shekinah glory of God that indicated his presence that was over them. 3 chapters give all the details of how to make this and everything in it. What I'll be calling the pieces of furniture. They're not furniture like sofas and chairs and tables, but the items, the articles that were in this tabernacle. And it gives specific details, and there's actually a 4th chapter that's all the details on how to make the high priest's robes and the breastplate of righteousness, the piece that went onto the high priest hung in the center of his chest. But it goes 3 chapters of detail how to make all of these things. And then, when you get to Exodus chapter 36, when they're going to make these things, he didn't just give us 2 verses that says, and they made everything the way God said so. And they made them all. It gives you 3 chapters again, verse by verse, every detail of how to make it that God showed him up on the mount. It says, and then they made this exactly, and it reiterates. So why? Why give 6 chapters of detail of how to make this? If you look in the Bible, there are entire people's lives that are summed up in a verse. There are kings of Israel that ruled over Israel for decades that get 2 verses. They did evil on the sight of the Lord, and they reigned for this many years, and they died. Because in the Bible, in the words that are spirit and are life that God wants to give us to reveal himself to us, there are certain things that don't add to that understanding, and so God maybe mentions them for sake of completeness, but there's not a lot of detail. If he gives all this specific detail, make it just this way, and then reiterates that specific detail saying they made it just this way, we're to understand that all those details are in there because this is important. Because this is God saying, see that you make all things according to the pattern showed to you in the mount. So what I want to do now is I want to go into each of the specific things that are in this tabernacle, what I'm going to call pieces of furniture, the items and the articles that are in this tabernacle. So, as you can see here from this tabernacle, okay, here's a picture. What this picture is of is that picture that was just up here. That was an artist's rendition. This is as if you were looking down from above. Now I realize it's kind of small and hard to see in this behind me on this screen, but maybe in a future version of this production, we'll have it where it pulls up on the screen. You can see in more detail. But this is as if you were looking down from above on that whole, this outer tent wall that was made all the way around. And then a couple of things in this, what's called the outer court, this outer section. And then the gray part in the center here represents the tent itself, the tabernacle itself, that tent, and items that are inside. And this was actually divided. You can't see very well in this that there's a veil separating right here. But this is called the holy place, or the inner court, and this is the Holy of Holies. And these are the separate items. And then out here we have larger pictures of each of those things that were inside of here. And so I'm going to go into, there's an order that is shown here between this outer court and what's in the outer court, this inner court or the holy place, and what things are in there, and the Holy of Holies, which is where God's very presence is. And there's an order. And so I'm going to go over each of these things in order because there's a specific continuity that God is showing us. So, if we could zoom in on this. This first piece, if we can zoom in on this piece here.
It's not zooming. Where's the zoom?